living life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days.
Hey everybody, Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talk with our MLB update. We didn't get in during the holidays, or at least last week. And we're going live. First, I've done this show live, but we'll try to do it live, sharing it now live to Let's Talk Sports YouTube page, as well as the TGI Sports Talk page. And we want to see if we can get some viewer participation. You're free to comment on this. I don't know what time we'll do this show live every week. It's still kind of up in the air when I have some time to do it. But we'll be coming up live at 2 p.m. with the Let's Talk New York Sports show as well. So maybe we need to break this one up and we need to do it another time during the weekend. We might do that. I'll talk to Dan Harris about that. And I'll talk to you more about Dan Harris at the 2 o'clock Let's Talk New York Sports portion of the show. So in Major League Sports, not a ton going on, guys. There is some news around Major League Baseball, which we'll talk about. And again, if anybody joins us live today, we'll certainly take your comments, and certainly you're welcome to bring up any topics you want that are of interest to you. There are some signings that have happened here recently that I wanted to kind of touch on. If I can find the right page here, bear with me one second. Super. And again, we'll go back a ways. If we cover some ground we covered previously, not a big deal. There is some news around the Mets and Yankees, obviously. But some of the moves that have made recently, probably the most notable, at least since we chatted last. I think the last time we chatted, Carlos Correa may have signed with the Mets, which is he has not signed yet. So we'll talk more about that in a second. Boston right now is busy finalizing a 11-year mega deal with Rafael Devers, which there was a lot of talk that they would not have time to, or not should have time, would not be in a position to do. But an 11-year, $331 million contract is expected to be signed here in the next few days. And good for, I guess if you're a Red Sox fan, good for them. This team has been heading in the wrong direction as far as being able to retain free agents, as we saw with Bogarts leaving and going to San Diego. So good news if you're a Boston fan here. Some other lesser news with the Red Sox. They did sign Corey Kluber, who spent last year with the Tampa Bay Rays and the previous year with the Yankees, pitched a no-hitter. One time, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Kluber won a Cy Young with trying to remember now. If he didn't, he didn't. But he was one of the top pitchers in baseball with the Indians at one point before he had some arm injuries. He's pitched fairly well the last couple of years. Always going to be an issue with Kluber potentially breaking down. You'll see him signing one-year contracts, most likely the rest of his career, but he did sign for $10 million. The Cubs continue their makeover by signing first baseman Eric Hosmer to a contract that I don't have the details for. Eric Hosmer was really a good player with the Royals. Eric Hosmer's career has been spiraling a bit. He did get off to a pretty good start last year. Actually was part of a trade that fell apart, sending him to the Mets as part of a trade that would have brought Chris Paddock, I think, to the Mets, if I remember right, last summer. But Hosmer has not, and Hosmer's been somebody the Padres have been looking to unload for quite some time, and they have not found a way to do it. And now he's been, in fact, the Nationals wouldn't take him as part of the Soto trade last year. The Cubs bring him in, hopefully finding a fountain of youth. I'm not terribly confident in this remake that the Cubs are underway here. I mean, they're hoping for bounce backs from Hosmer, Cody Bellinger, who might bounce back in a change of scenery. But listen, other than Dansby Swanson, I'm not really crazy about any of the signings the Cubs have made, and we'll see whether this pays off for them or not. Nathan Eovaldi did sign a new contract. I'm sorry, a free agent contract, leaving the Red Sox, as I mentioned before, another Red Sox who they could not retain. He goes to the Rangers, 2 years, $34 million. Still not sure I'm really happy if I'm a Ranger fan about this. I know Alan Perales, who certainly is a contributor to all of my shows, which I'm happy about, and also now a live contributor to Let's Talk Sports. He's a big Ranger fan. I wouldn't be as excited as Ranger fans seem to be about some of the moves they've made this winter. We'll see how it works out. But as we go forward, we'll be talking more about these things in depth. Left-hander Rich Hill and the Pirates. Pirates, what are you signing Rich Hill, left-handed pitcher who's probably the same age as me? My God, I exaggerate, but because if he's 62, he's left-handed, so he could be. You know, I always said if I'd had boys, if I'd had a son, I'd have taught him to be left-handed because he wouldn't have to be any good, and he could pitch till he was 60. $8 million one-year contract. Rich Hill's had a couple of good years, constantly hurt, and I don't see this really helping a whole lot. This probably goes back to when we spoke last. I'll go through these last couple of moves, and we'll move on to some other news. The San Francisco Giants made a pair of additions back on the 23rd. They did sign outfielder Michael Conforto to a 2-year contract worth $36 million, and left-handed reliever Taylor Rogers, who had pitched with Milwaukee after being traded there from San Diego last year, to a 3-year, $33 million deal. This happened right after the Carlos Correa deal fell through with the Giants. You know, I had made some comments, by the way, about that deal falling through, that I wasn't sure that the San Francisco Giants were ever serious about signing Carlos Correa. They were looking for a reason to show their fans they were trying, and then they looked for a reason to get out of that deal. Perhaps I was a little too harsh and jumped the gun too quickly, because the Mets now, after they came to a agreement on terms with Correa, they now have some medical concerns, and it all apparently relates to this lower leg injury that he had when he was 20 years old. And they think that, you know, from what I've read from the Mets way of thinking, the doctors think, you know, in 6 or 7 years, he may have a problem here. Look, he's going to be on the backside of this contract anyway. You're not going to get full return on this contract at the second half of it. You already know that. So how do you know? And everybody knew about these injuries. The Blue Jays reached a deal to acquire outfielder Dalton Varsho, who the Yankees were very interested in getting as well, to play left field from the Diamondbacks in exchange for Lourdes Gurriel, I would believe played the outfield for them, and catching prospect Gabriel Moreno. Varsho's a really good defensive player and a really good bat. He's got some really good pop in his bat. At least he did in Arizona, so we'll see how that works out. The rest of these deals that we could go into are deals that we'd already reported on during the updates before the holiday. So moving into other news in Major League Baseball. And as I said, guys, if you have topics or comments, you feel free to bring them up, because that's what we're here for. That's why we're going to start trying this show out live. This and my weekly vlog I've tried to do in recording it. But I like audience participation. So as you guys see these different shows, and again, when this show will be live, we'll still be up in the air, but this is our Major League Update show. We'll stick to Major League Baseball topics throughout the country. And then at 2 o'clock, we go live with the Let's Talk New York Sports, which I do with my co-host, Dan Harris. I'll be solo again today. But any topics you want to bring up, any comments you want to bring up, please feel safe to do it. I don't know if I care about somebody burglarizing the Brewers clubhouse. The WBC, by the way, is coming up later this year. When is it going to be played this year? March 8th to 21st. I like the WBC a lot. The U.S. has not been able to get a foothold here. I think not because, and again, it gets brought up that the time of year the players aren't ready to play, and And we don't send the best players. Well, I think we do. I think we send a very representative team. And all of these players, if they're playing for Japan or they're playing for Korea or they're playing for whomever, the Dominican, Mexico, Puerto Rico, they're all in the same position unless they were playing winter ball in the Caribbean someplace. Big news this week is that 3 major leaguers, Otani from the Angels, Yu Darvish from the Padres, and Suzuki from the Cubs will all be playing for the Japanese team in the WBC. Big news for them. And Japan actually has also already had commitments from, who else have they had commitments from? Anybody else in the major leagues? I thought there was one other. No, I guess that's the only major leaguers that have committed, but they're starting to fill out their roster pretty well here. So again, I like the WBC. The problem is the time of year is played, right? You're never going to get the major leagues to shut down like hockey has done for the Olympics. They were when the pros were playing. They would shut down the season for 2 weeks while they went and played in the Olympics. That's probably never going to happen during the Major League Baseball season, even though it's every 4 years. I mean, it is a 13-day tournament, so you can't really shut down Major League Baseball for 2 full weeks so these guys can play when they're at their top, at the top of their game. So this is always going to be a problem, and this is spring training for these guys. So maybe they needed, they'll probably work out a little bit more sooner. You got to remember, March 8th to 21st, they had the ability to have been in camp for a week. A month almost. Sorry, I said a week, a month. So these guys should be getting into form, rounding into form. So who's going to be in this? There's 20 national teams, and the powers from Asia are certainly always going to be Japan, Korea, South Korea, obviously, Taiwan, and Australia. Australia's got a very representative team. The Netherlands plays very well. I think Bert Blyleven is one of the coaches for the Netherlands. You'll also have the Latin American teams that have the largest contingent as far as geographically, with Colombia, Cuba, the Dominican, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Panama, and Nicaragua all represented. And then, of course, you've got the U.S. and Canada. Canada's not to be trifled with. There's some really good baseball being played. You've got a lot of really good Canadian players in MLB. So this will be something for us to keep an eye on as we go forward here the next couple of months. The Reds this week released Mike Moustakas. Not a big surprise here. He had $22 million left on his deal. He's 34 years old. He batted just over 200 last year, 7 homers and 20-some RBIs. He was a very good player, 3-time All-Star with Kansas City. But even quicker than Eric Hosmer, who we discussed earlier, Moustakas' career has gone south very quickly. The Diamondbacks, in a very interesting deal, signed 3-time All-Star Evan Longoria to a 1-year deal. 37 years old, 3-time Gold Glove winner with the Giants most recently. Hasn't had a lot of success, so I'm not really sure what the Diamondbacks are thinking about. I don't think they're one experienced guy away from contending, although they did play better last year, especially for a good portion of the second half. They played really good baseball, got near 500, and kind of fell backwards. He did hit 244 with 14 homers last year in just 89 or 90 games played. So I don't know whether he's really – I think Evan Longoria could probably help a contender, but I don't know if the Diamondbacks are that. They're going to be a very young team, and they can use a veteran presence, but I'm not sure that that's really going to help them. What else we have in news here? Yankees have named Omar Minaya, former Mets and Expo executive, as senior advisor to baseball operations. They also brought back former San Francisco Giant general manager and very successful general manager Brian Sabian into the front office to be executive assistants to Brian Cashman. I think this is a good move. Cashman is, I don't want to say he's been the lone voice in that front office, but I think the Yankees bringing in some outside voices to kind of change the Yankee direction in certain areas or change their thinking in certain areas in the front office is going to be a good move for them. We talked about Devers. I don't want to get into that too much. Let's see what we got on this side of the aisle. Longoria, Novaldi, Rachil, Carlos Correa. Let's talk a little about the Mets, Carlos Correa. This deal still has not been signed. The holdup still is the health and the potential breakdown of this lower leg injury that he had, again, when he was 20 years old. And your body heals very well when it's 20. When you're 62, I can tell you it does not. But I'm not really sure what what the Mets are looking for here. There is some promise, some promising signals coming that they're going to come to an agreement soon. We'll see whether they can get something done, whether they're going to cut years off this deal, whether they put in health-related contingencies. I don't know. We'll see what they have to say about that. The Yankees are seriously back in talks with the Pirates over Brian Reynolds. They're still looking for a left fielder, and I'll talk about this in Let's Talk New York Sports in more detail. But they're certainly looking to talk to the Pirates and get into some serious negotiations. But the Pirates have been they've been playing hardball here. They've been trying to get a Soto kind of deal for Brian Reynolds, and Brian Reynolds is a very nice player, an all-star. Got off to a bit of a slow start last year, but they signed him to an extension before last season. But they seem to think that they're going to get crazy numbers out of these guys, and I'm not so sure that that's the Yankees are going to buy into that, or anybody else for that matter. And again, Pittsburgh is not ready to contend. They'd be better off getting some better prospects or better young guys, at least one or get one good guy from the Yankees. The Yankees for Reynolds, I'm sure, would probably consider giving up either Velope or probably more likely Velope than Peraza, or maybe Dominguez, one of their other great outfield prospects. So it'd be very interesting to see what they do here. He was certainly fit the bill for the Yankees. The Yankees tried very hard to bring Andrew Benintendi back. Over 1 year, they did not do that. And over 1 year on the contract, they did not do that. And he signed with the where did he sign? He signed with the Blue Jays, I believe, right? And so that fell through. Now they're looking at Brian Reynolds. They were looking at Varsho from the Padres. I'm sorry, from the Diamondbacks. He went to the Blue Jays as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the Yankees do here. Brian Reynolds is somebody they've had their eye on for a while, and we'll see what happens. Something that I just saw come across the wire. I don't know when this came out. I did see that three-time All-Star Nate Colbert played with the Padres and with the Detroit Tigers, passed away today, I think at the age of let's see if I can update this, and I might get this in my Major League Baseball feed if I refresh it. Let me see, get some details on this quickly. No, can't do it there. Let's quickly Google date and see what we can find out. Nate Colbert is one guy. I don't know if you play Stratomatic baseball, but I play, and he's a guy I always like to have on my team because this guy was a very, very underrated player. And certainly a guy that I enjoyed watching when I was a kid. One of the few bright spots the Padres had on that team, him and Cito Gaston, who went on to become quite the manager, winning back-to-back World Series with the Blue Jays. But he and Nate Colbert, one of the few bright spots on these San Diego teams, and he died at 76 years old. And In a statement released by the organization, Padres chairman Peter Seidler says, we're deeply saddened by the passing of Padres Hall of Famer, Padres Hall of Fame, not baseball, Nate Colbert. Our hearts go out to his family, his wife Casey, the entire Colbert family at this difficult time. This is a very new story. So it's, again, 3-time All-Star, not thought of in the upper echelon of stars, but certainly for a 4 or 5 year period in the 70s, Nate Colbert was a very, very good baseball player. He got traded for Mickey Lolich, I believe, from San Diego to Detroit, 1975-ish. And it was not a trade that worked out for either side, actually. Nate Colbert really started to struggle when he got to the American League, and his career was soon over. He did play 10 years in the major leagues, 3 times an All-Star. Rest in peace, Nate Colbert, and our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family. Again, I see we got a few people here. Again, I want to remind everybody that we're experimenting with doing the Major League Baseball update live weekly on YouTube, on the Let's Talk Sports channel, on my channel on TGI Sports Talk. You guys are free to comment, and we'll talk about any topics you want to talk about. I like my shows to be audience engagement driven. It really is what I thrive on, and that's why I'm going to try to do this experiment and do this update now live rather than just me talking for 20, 30 minutes. And we'll go as long as we have to. If we start getting audience engagement, we'll certainly do that. So you're free to comment on anything I'm talking about, any of the topics of the day in Major League Baseball, anything to do with Major League Baseball. We just talked about the WBC a little while ago, for instance. And then at 2:00, I don't know if I'll do this live at this time every Friday, but we may move it to another day and experiment with it. And during the season, it might even take on a different tone, as we're going to talk a little bit more about the actual games and what's going on in real time. And then don't forget, at 2:00 on Fridays, we have Let's Talk New York Sports, where we'll still cover the Yankees and the Mets, go into a little bit more detail maybe, and also cover the Knicks, the Nets, the Jets, the Giants, the Bills. We also talk Patriots. I know it's New York sports, but that's my team. So Dan and I always talk about the Patriots. We'll also get into some of the college football and basketball teams in the New York area. So feel free to join me, and I'll be going live at 2:00 to do that. And comments are certainly welcome there as well. And we'll continue to try to bring you some quality entertainment here on Let's Talk Sports New York. Let's Talk Sports and TGI Sports Talk just feels too much alike, right? So I will continue to provide content to Let's Talk Sports. I'm continuing to provide content to Northeast Streaming Sports, and we want to hit as broad an audience as we certainly possibly can. So I hope everybody has enjoyed the content that we've tried to provide as we go forward. I don't know that I missed anything specifically that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to get to the news of the day, which we did. I wanted to get to the WBC, and I wanted to get to some of the signings that we have missed recently, and I think we did all of that. So with that, unless there's any further comments or topics that you want to bring up, I will cut it a little bit short. These shows will tend to be 25, 30 minutes. We could go an hour if we have a lot of back and forth, but I want you to feel free to include yourself in these conversations, because that's what I like to have, dialogue. Sometimes I'll disagree with you, and we'll have some good byplay that way. Other times I'll agree. But Major League Baseball, a lot of stuff coming up. We're going to talk in the future about the rules changes that are coming up that I am very, very vehemently against. And there's a lot of stuff for us to chat about in the next month or so before we get to pitchers and catchers. And we'll try to keep you guys abreast of all the important developments in Major League Baseball. And we look forward to you possibly contributing to the show yourself. So Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talk's Major League Baseball update. We'll see you later, and I'll see you in just a few minutes on Let's Talk New York Sports.